Now, is it my imagination, or was that done in a different key than the ELP version?
You have done your homework, sir. You have a very good ear.
Thank you.
Well, it was actually the last thing that we recorded with the orchestra, and I went up onto the stand with the orchestra there and had a synthesizer, and I said, "No, I don't need the music. I know this."
Played it a time or two, yeah.
So, and nobody had told me that they put it into the original key of B flat.
Ah. So you were not playing in B flat originally?
No, I was playing it in C. So there was quite a lot of confusion. The orchestra were looking at me, and I was looking at the orchestra. And I think Mark Bernier actually told me that he did exactly the same. Nobody told us that it was now in the original key of B flat, you know.
Wow.
So
I bet you even the Chinese musicians would have felt good after hearing that. Hearing the orchestra in B flat and you and Mark in C, they're going, feel a little better about themselves.
Well, yeah. I mean, as much as we try to excuse it with saying it was a new form of bitonality, that was that. So, I've said, who's right here? Who's wrong? Because with a synthesizer, sometimes, they've got an auto transpose,
True.
And I looked at the instrument and I thought, shit, is this gone slightly off, Well, because also the other thing I should say here was when we tuned the piano, we didn't tune it to the normal 440. The piano was tuned to 443.
Ah.
Now, I don't have perfect pitch, but I got used to the piano being lifted to 443. So when I played Fanfare, and I heard, and I thought, well, something's gone very, very odd here. It was then that I found out, right there on the stage, in front of the orchestra, by the way. What an embarrassment that was, Okay, no, I didn't. Why didn't you tell me this, But luckily with today's synthesizers, and rather than bother with having altered fingering and stuff, because I've been so used to playing it in C for so long, but oh gosh, no, of course, modern synthesizers, you just hit the transpose button and drop it down,
And also, if you're a guitar player, modulating from C to B flat isn't a big deal because it's the same shapes.
Oh, it's not a big deal for
two
guitar
frets lower,
players.
right? It's 2 frets lower, but on a keyboard, it's a completely different world.
Well, you have to alter your fingering. You have to, and if you've been playing it so, that way for so long, it's as simple as saying, well, when you get out of that armchair, you have to stand up a different way or something.
Well, you should have just told the orchestra that you and Mark were going to be playing in C, and they were welcome to join you in C, and if they wanted to stay in B flat, that would be their own responsibility.
Yes, every man for himself.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question about your playing technique, because most keyboard players will play bass lines with their left hand and solos with their right, but depending on the requirements of a piece and the layout of your keyboards, I'm talking about old ELP concert DVDs, I've seen you play bass lines with your right hand and solos with your left. So is it challenging for you to have to reverse the bass and treble clefs in your head like that, or is that not a big deal for you?
Reverse the bass and treble clef?
I mean, I always think when I put my right hand on a keyboard, it's going to be treble, and when I put my left hand on a keyboard, it's going to be bass. So if all of a sudden I was playing a bass line with my right hand and soloing with my left, it would be sort of reverse of what I'm used to. I realize you're playing a completely different keyboard that you're reaching for, but I don't think I've ever played.
Oh, you're talking about using two keyboards opposite each other?
Correct, yeah.
But quite honestly, I didn't find much difficulty in doing that. Well, not back then. I was a bit younger. I'm not quite sure if I'd feel comfortable doing it now. But
right.
I've been very fortunate in the fact that my left hand doesn't need any looking after.
Right, right.
It's there on its own, and it's a great accompaniment for my right hand, which is okay. I mean, it's had a few problems, but I'm getting round that now with the getting more and more relaxed at the wrist and stuff like that.
Right.
So it says, I think Rick Wakeman once made the comment. He said, if you and I, he said, should do a gig together, he said, I'll use your left hand and you can use my right hand. Well, actually, my right hand can be quite fast, but I mean, Rick is quite dexterous. He's a good player.
Yeah, and you're going to have to reinforce that stage with 2 keyboard rigs up there. I've also seen you play keyboards on opposite sides of you, so you can't really look. You have to play one of them blindly. But then again, I've also seen you lying on your back with an organ on top of you, playing it upside down. So I guess anything goes in your case.
Well, yeah, been there, done it. I mean, having met with Dave Brubeck, who died at the grand old age of 92.
Yes.
Last time I saw him, he said to me, Keith, you've got to tell me how you spin round on that piano. So my answer to him was, I don't think you should try it, Dave.
Not at 92.
No, he was in his 80s, about 88 at the last time I saw him.
Right. Well, when you started out, the piano and the organ had been around for hundreds of years, but the synthesizer was a brand new thing, which gave you the opportunity to help pioneer that emerging technology. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you tell the story of the Lucky Man solo for the 5 millionth time. It's just suffice to say that your playing on that track attracted the attention of the man who invented the instrument you played it on, Bob Moog, who was reportedly very excited to hear an artist use his invention in such a creative and interesting way. I know you went on to have a very close personal and professional relationship with him, and I was wondering how involved you were with the design and development of the early Moog products.
Well, in 1968, I walked into a record shop in London and happened to know the owner, and was introduced to the Switched On Bach album by Walter Carlos. And I was intrigued by the sound that this instrument made, but I had no idea what it looked like. When I saw the album cover, it looked to me like a telephone switchboard.
Yeah.
Which actually reminded me of what my father used to do, because he was a telephone engineer. And I thought, well, if I get one of these, I think my father's going to be very happy. So that wasn't the sole purpose of it, but I wanted to know more about it. There was a guy in one of Manfred Mann's team that actually had an early Moog synthesizer.
Right.
And I loaned the instrument from him and utilized it to great success with one of the last concerts with with the Nice.
Right.
In 1960, it may have been 1970 actually, and his name was Mike Vickers.
Oh, yeah.
He was the owner, and he programmed it all up for me, and I used it with, it was some orchestra, whether it was the London Philharmonic again, I don't know. But we played at Royal Festival Hall, and the Nice performed extracts from 2001.
Yeah.
And it proved so successful that when I formed ELP later that year, in 1970, I got hold of the Moog company and wished to acquire one. It wasn't cheap. It was very, very expensive.
Yeah.
And it took me a while. And thanks to Mike Vickers, he helped me find my way around it. And of course, I think, as we know, it sort of really defined the shape of what we now know today as progressive rock.
Yeah, it did. Well, now jump to all these years later, where keyboard technology has come so far. Where do you see it headed in the future from 2013?
Well, it's in my point of view, it's kind of the wheel turns full circle.
Oh yeah.
I'm getting more and more back to using acoustic instruments, which I think is really what the audience like to hear. I think there's been a lot of misuse and abuse of electronic keyboards and electronic instruments. Not only that, but in the recording division, you've got you can change notes, you can change this and that, and
right.
It's not listening, say, to like a Dave Brubeck album, and you know those guys are actually really playing that.
Right. Oh yeah, I would listen to like an 8-minute Paul Desmond solo and get to the end and there'd be applause, and I'd say, that was a live recording? I couldn't believe he had played that flawlessly for so long.
Yeah. Well, that's it, and you fall into that you can fall into that trap, although I prefer not to.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much in every case, when you consider that Pictures as an Exhibition was just one-off, and there's absolutely no editing in that at all.
Wow. Well, speaking of that, one of the most admirable aspects of the Emerson, Lake and Palmer legacy is how so many of your fans credit the band with inspiring them to broaden their musical horizons. By celebrating a composer like Mussorgsky, you guys made it cool to like classical music and rock music, which is a gap many probably considered insurmountable. You also incorporated a lot of brief musical quotes into your playing. Now that I'm more educated musically, I recognize the sources. But when I was a teenager, listening to your solo on Tiger in the Spotlight, when you referenced Dizzy Gillespie's Salt Peanuts, I wasn't aware of the 1940s recording yet, so I just attributed the lick to you. And I know it wasn't your intention to mislead anybody. You can't exactly stop the song mid-solo and make an announcement regarding where the next 16 notes came from.
That comes out of my jazz mentality. If you listen to the great alto player, Charlie Parker, his early recordings, you'll find that he'll just bring in a quote every so often from a popular tune into his improvised solo. And I used to do that, actually. In fact, with the first Keith Emerson band, we used to have fun going on, stage, live recordings. The bass player would possibly say something like, okay, now, tonight, what about we try and incorporate how much is that doggy in the window? How much is that? Right, into their solo. So whoever could do that won a prize at the end of the evening. And now it's not that the audience really understood what was going on, and so normally I would try and sort of, if I was doing, say, the improvised solo for Fanfare for the Common Man, and we're all going dunga 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 in E, and I would take the opportunity to go da 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 da.
Right.
I'd turn around at the band and they'd all laugh their heads off and go and thumbs up. Yeah, you did it. Yeah, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Or somewhere in the middle of Tarkus, have Tarkus going how much is that dog? Yeah.
Right.
How much is that dog in the window in 5/4?
It's a pretty innocuous tune to pick, too. It's almost like Twinkle Little Star or something.
Yeah, you could do that. Well, I think we'd already done that, but we just try to make it more and more complicated.
What I'm saying is, another unique aspect of listening to ELP, and I do understand. In fact, you mentioned Charlie Parker and Dave Brubeck. I think Dave Brubeck said when he used to walk into a Charlie Parker gig, Charlie Parker would just, no matter what he was playing, he'd work in that old cowhand thing. is like an acknowledgement that Dave Brubeck was there, and sort of like a
Oh,
joke
yeah.
that he was sort of a hick, old cowhound from the Rio Grande or something.
Yeah.
As soon as he saw him, he just, wherever he was playing at that moment, he'd play that lick, sort of
That's right.
in his honor, and also kind of as a joke. Well, I know that you'd used just a tiny bit of Sonny Rollins' St. Thomas way back on Brain Salad Surgery, and
Yes. For some reason, we got into this sort of like almost Caribbean
steel drum
rhythm.
feel.
And I'd found this great way of imitating the steel drums of Jamaica, and I just couldn't resist it, Yeah, right.
See, now, when I was a teenager, I would have just thought that was part of the tune, and then later on, maybe I'm 33 or something, and I hear St. Thomas, then I hear Brain Salad Surgery again, and I go, aha. Now, I don't get that with a lot of other, even progressive rock bands. You do get it with your alto soloist, though, so that's a good connection for you to make and to point out.
Well, that's good. You've got to keep your ears open on me, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, I've heard you pay homages to George Gershwin and Thelonious Monk and others, and I'm sure there are some I haven't discovered yet. So, that's why your playing rewards multiple listens.
Yeah, it's a bit like, when you get two pictures aligned alongside, spot the difference between this and that.
Right.